Teven Jenkins' midnight injury update was very strange to everybody, including Patrick and myself. And it wasn't at an ideal time, as the Chicago Bears are 3 weeks away from their opening day against the Green Bay Packers. But the Bears have a ton more depth that I think that, and Patrick hopefully thinks too, that people can help. And some news injury updates from Lucas Patrick, and Cody Whitehair. But today I am with a special guest, Patrick Flowers from Bleacher Nation. Patrick, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me on, Nick.
And Patrick, to start things off, what are the top, what would you say before, because this offensive line looks pretty good so far, at least on paper, one of the better ones. In the last 10 years, when did the Bears have an offensive line this good?
Oh, it's been a long time since I can remember them having an offensive line this good.
You can go farther than 10 years if you want.
Geez, man, we have to go back to the Olin Cruz days.
Yeah, so 13 years minimum.
Yeah,
crazy.
It's been a while. I mean, even going back to the latter Jay Cutler years, the offensive line wasn't very good at all. So it's been a long time.
And before the injury, were you feeling more confident about this line? Do you think this was the line to protect Justin Fields, or were there still areas that you kind of had a few head scratches on?
Well, I mean, it was much improved, but even Teven Jenkins himself was kind of an unproven this year, given that they were flipping him over to a new position again. Playing left guard. He played on the right side last year. He did very well. He looked good against Tennessee in the first preseason game, and he's just a big dude who can move bodies. So, I feel like if he's healthy, he'll have success plugging in anywhere, but we haven't actually seen that in a regular season game. So he himself was a question mark. Nate Davis on the other side hasn't put pads on for the majority of OTA. So again, he has a track record in Tennessee that got him a contract here in Chicago, but question mark. We haven't seen him yet. We haven't seen him with the other guys on the Bears offensive line. Cody Whitehair's making a return to center. I think you said it best in the start that on paper, the offensive line is drastically improved and something to be confident about. But in real time, a lot of question marks still.
Gotcha. I agree. I think so too. And, Nate, I want to go a loop back to Nate Davis real quick. We still don't know what he looks like in a game. He was practicing today, though, at Hallis Hall with the rest of the team. He was at right guard. Lucas Patrick was at center, and Whitehair was at left guard. But something to look forward to. I'm with you. There's a couple question marks still that kind of puts things out there. But Patrick, before we get into the nitty gritty of things, a fun question to ask you is that out of the offensive line on paper, it doesn't matter their skill level or anything. If you were to get a beer with any of the current Chicago Bears offensive linemen, who would it be and why?
I'd grab a beer with Darnell Wright because I would want to know why he had, he took a lot of heat coming out in the draft. There were a lot of things said about him in the draft, a lot of things about his work ethic and what kind of player he was. And I would just ask him about it. If we got to sit down and have a beer, I would ask him about it. I want to know about it. Player reputations is something that interests me, especially like young kids, like college athletes oftentimes get, a really rough shake of it from other people that might not actually be as close to them as they would like to let on. So, and these are kids still at the end of the day too, young adults, older kids. And I just don't think that they get a fair shake a lot of the times in that respect. And obviously sometimes it holds true, but I think a lot of times it doesn't. They go to the pros and they shed that reputation, and in a few years people forget that it ever even happened. So if I could sit down with him and ask him, what exactly college was like for him and what he thinks of all the things that were said about him in the pre-draft process.
I wonder if you can get a beer. I think he is 21. I know his birthday. I think maybe he just turned 21, or is he 22? I'm not too sure.
Maybe we're just grabbing a bite to eat. I don't want to get in trouble for having a kid drink underage, but
especially in the NFL.
Yeah.
I mean, I think he is 21 though. I would hope he is because, he is 21 because I believe he was born in 2001. So he's always 22. You're good, man.
Yeah.
What beer would you choose with him? Or what beer do you think Darnell Wright would choose?
I mean, he's fresh out of college, so he's probably going to go with a domestic beer, maybe a Coors Light or a Miller Lite, maybe even something below that, just something cheap because, college kids, that's what they're drinking. That's what I was drinking at that age.
And would you try to help him out? Maybe be like, here's some better beer and push maybe a nice IPA or a 312 down to him.
I had a very brief beer snob IPA a moment in my life, and like maybe my like early to mid 20s, but that faded quickly. I'm not a beer aficionado, so like a Blue Moon, my go-to these days. You know what I mean? You want a Blue Moon, to me, is like a slight upgrade over a Miller Lite. So that's the best I could guide him away from domestic beers.
And Blue Moon, I always have a Blue Moon at Bears games because it's got the word blue in it, and then you have to have an orange slice with it. So, the blue and the orange, man, like it just goes.
I love my taste palette, loves citrusy stuff. So throwing in the orange with it, and it's nice and smooth. You can have a few of them, and so that's my go-to beer. Although I haven't drank beer in a while. I've been more in a mixed drink kick for the last year or so. But St. Patrick's Day this past year, I was at a place for my brother's birthday in St. Patrick's Day where they had 350 Blue Moons on tap. So I definitely put back a few Blue Moons on that day. Yeah,
that's awesome, man. But let's get into the fun of it, because we could probably talk about beer all day. I feel like you're more, speaking of like mixed drinks, I've gotten onto a little, during COVID, like how to be a bartender, let's say.
That's absolutely it. That's the origin story.
And it was a good hobby. This is where this channel came from, by the way. One day I was just like, I'm going to buy a microphone off Amazon and just see what happens. But here we are, just another year Chicago Bears. But speaking of the Bears, Patrick, let's go into that Teven Jenkins news. It dropped last night around midnight. No one really knew what was going on. There was no timeline. Everyone's like, oh, it's 6 weeks. Oh, it's not that serious. And leading to the likeliness that he's not going to play in week 1 of Green Bay. Some people weren't even sure if he was going to play half the season. But along with he's never healthy, let's get rid of him, this and that. We find out a couple hours ago, 2 calf strains, not his left, not his right, both at the same time, which I guess it kind of works out because they heal at the same time. Hopefully, in theory, they heal at the same time. But, what was your initial reaction to this kind of situation? Like, are you done with Teven Jenkins? Overall, how are you feeling out of it so far, Patrick?
Yeah, no, I mean, it stinks, but I saw a little bit of that today where people are like, he's injury prone, he's damaged goods, we're done with Teven Jenkins. I think that is about as big of an overreaction as you could possibly have to this whole situation. It's a soft tissue injury. He's a big boy. And these are Matt Eberflus pushes these guys. He intensity is huge with them. He wants them being intense and playing. I mean, I'm sure he's pushing them a little bit harder than maybe other teams in the league. It happens. It's what are you going to do about it?
Yeah, I'm happy it happened now.
Justin Fields missed a game last year. He missed the Minnesota game, the last game of the season, with a soft tissue injury. He misses a few more with a soft tissue injury this year. Are we done with him? Is he broken? Is he damaged goods? Because, I mean, I have soft tissue injuries getting up out of bed. So, and my wife hasn't left me yet, so we're good.
Well, I'm happy to hear that, because you're right. Teven Jenkins is a big guy. And yes, this kind of stuff happens. A lot of people don't, I think, realize the amount of pressure that these giant offensive linemen are under from an overall body perspective. That's why injuries happen so much. And it's not like Teven Jenkins, at least it's not his back. That was my first reaction, was that if it was another back injury, that would have been a whole nother nightmare, and that could have been career ending. But it's his calves. And you know what? On Google, according to Google Doctor, it says 3 days to 6 weeks. I'm praying for the 3 days, but will that happen? I would rather let him rest. I'm with you. I totally agree. And one other thing that you called out, it happens. And Justin Fields has gotten hurt. Tremaine Edmonds hasn't even practiced in pads yet for the Chicago Bears. We haven't wrote him off yet. And Nate Davis is back. Suddenly we love him again. I think everyone just needs to take a deep breath. But Patrick, if you're Ryan Poles in this situation, the waiver wire is out there along with free agency. You have Reisner, who's out there, former Broncos offensive lineman who's played guard. Are you making a move, or are you dealing with what we have right now?
I think I'd wait a little bit. I think I'd stick. I don't think this is, he's going to miss the start of the season for sure. At least that much was confirmed today, that it's more than likely he'll miss the beginning of the season. But I don't think if it's not going to be something that spans beyond September, moving Lucas Patrick over or moving Cody Whiter over and having Lucas Patrick snap for a few weeks isn't really the end of the world. I don't think they need to go outside yet with what we know.
Also, right. And we have Carter. We have Leatherwood, who actually looked decent the last couple of times out. I mean, it's against the twos, but he looks decent.
I think the thing about Carter and Leatherwood is and obviously this is one day of practice, but I think them right away reverting to let's move Whitehair over and let's have Lucas Patrick snap shows two things. One, they don't want to mess with Carter's development. They don't want to move him to the other side. They have something going. He's looked good so far. They want to keep him there unless they don't want to move him out of need for a few weeks. And then I don't think they have much faith in Alex Leatherwood at all at this point.
A lot of people are wondering about him too. A lot of my viewers have been asking, like, what are your thoughts on Leatherwood? Like, what can he do? Because he came into the NFL as a tackle, just like Jenkins, moved to guard. Bears were maybe hoping that the same kind of situation would happen. I don't think it's progressing as fast as Jenkins did. Jenkins was able to just naturally move over and do well there. But it's a bit of a weird situation with everybody right now. And Leatherwood, he's only gone against the twos. He went against the ones technically, I guess, in regards to when the Bears played Green Bay last year, and he did not do good at all. And that's a big call out too. So I'm with you on that little bit of worry. But going back to Carter real quick, do you think that, if the Bears, maybe start slowly working him over, you could see him moving over? Or would you want to see him strictly stay at right guard?
What I want to see and what they want to see are probably two different things. What would it hurt to slide him over in practice, right? I don't know about in a game. You got one preseason game left, and then it's the regular season. So I think at this point, if you'd like to begin to explore that idea with some practice reps, that can't hurt anything. I just don't really see them pulling the trigger on that in a game at this point in the preseason.
Yeah. I'm with you. I agree. I think that's a very good point too, because he's a second-year guy. He's a later round pick, but he has taken huge steps, and he looked really good filling in for Nate Davis, who I want to ask you about next. In regards to Nate Davis, are you feeling a little bit more confident in him now that he's consistently practicing? Do you still think that he has some rust on him? What are you looking for out of Nate Davis over the next couple of weeks? And do you want him to play in the final preseason game this upcoming Saturday?
Yeah, I mean, I want him to play. I want everybody to play in the final preseason game. I'm firmly in the corner of play these guys. For whatever it is, it's not the entire game. Whether it's a quarter, a half quarter, or a half like the Chiefs were doing, play these guys in the preseason. So yeah, I definitely want to see him play, especially him having not played yet. I'm not worried about him, though. I mean, Grody said it earlier today that this was a personal thing, not an injury thing. So, we all have things that happen in our life that we got to tend to. So long as he's worked out everything he's got to handle off the field, God bless, good for him. I'm glad that he's in a position now, personally, where he can get back on the field. And I expect him to pick up where he left off. Obviously, have to shake some rust off. But again, these are elite athletes these days. Player development and off-season training and training away from the team has never been at a higher level than it is now across professional sports. So rust to me is like, okay, it's not the same. It doesn't hold the same weight as it once did.
Agreed. And like you said, elite athlete. Nate Davis has never been a Pro Bowler nor an All-Pro guy, but he definitely held his weight, and that's why we paid him big money to come to the Chicago Bears. In regards to Braxton Jones, let's talk about him real quick. You talked about Darnell Wright wanting to get a beer with him and learn a little bit more about him, which I think that'd be super cool too. But let's talk about Braxton Jones, second-year left tackle, former fifth-round pick, progressed over the season. They kind of threw him out there during camp. Didn't really have a mentor or anything to work with. But what are your expectations for Braxton Jones entering this upcoming season?
I think Braxton Jones is going to be fine. That's one, in the beginning, I listed the three middle positions as question marks for me right off the bat, but not the end spots. I have no doubt that Braxton Jones is going to be fine on the left side. And honestly, I feel the same way about Darnell Wright on the right side. So, I mean, I just expect that he's going to, if healthy, he's going to have another great season and take another step forward. And I don't think that the left tackle is going to be a thing we have to worry about for a while.
I hope so, because I don't want another Charles Leno. I mean, I don't know how you feel about Leno, but I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. But we just can't have that anymore. We signed him to big money, and then it just kind of fell flat on our face. But, it sounds like you're looking at him as a future building block of this team, and that's huge to hear. But now I got to ask, what were your thoughts on Charles Leno before we close out?
Well, I mean, I didn't have as strong of thoughts on Charles Leno as maybe like a Cody or us. I'm sorry. Yeah, Sam Mustafer. But it was just a disappointing contract. It happens. He earned the contract that he got, and he just didn't live up to it. And that happens. It's just part of sports. No hard feelings. It is what it is. They throw. I have a hard time feeling bad for NFL owners giving out bad contracts. Jim Irsay wanted to go spend $20 million and move a killer whale across the country as a passion project, but he doesn't want to pay his star running back. So, like, if an owner gets saddled with a bad contract, oh well. It's not something that I feel real terrible about.
I mean, anything below them, they put together. So any decision that's made to go up to the top, that's all part of the teamwork, right? So
yeah, they sign the checks, So I mean, the general manager, the president of football ops, or however their front office structure looks like, negotiates the deal and says this is who I want to sign. But they ultimately sign the checks. So they okayed it, they greenlighted, they gave him the deal. Good for him. He made his money. It didn't work out. It is what it is.
It is what it is.
I try not to make it personal. There's so many, too many people make this a personal thing, with players, and especially players that underperform. They want to make it personal. I have a hard time getting personal with these players. They're just doing their jobs like us. Whether, not all of us are good at our jobs, and not all of us are good at our jobs every day.
I feel you. I mean, you can't relate to these guys because it's just such a different world of, expectations and everything. But, the expectations for this Bears offensive line is very high. And I'm excited about what is to come when they're fully healthy. It's good to hear that Teven Jenkins will not be out for an extended period of time, but it is a big sting at the beginning of the season. So, Patrick, final quick question. How many sacks are this Bears offensive line giving up in realistic per game, do you think, while Teven Jenkins is out?
3.
Better than last year. I mean,
I think even with Jenkins being out, the offensive line is still improved from last year. So it's not what we want right now, but that's why I'm not really in panic mode. It's still better than what we had last year. And if let's say we didn't have Justin Fields playing behind them, that number would be higher, obviously. But, Justin Fields is going to help them, make them look a little bit better than they are. And hopefully at the beginning of the season, when his legs are fresher, this is the timing that works out.
And I don't know if you saw, speaking of who's behind center, they had Tyson at QB2 today. It was Tyson, Walker, Peterman. How did you feel about all this mania, by the way?
Well, the PJ Walker experience hasn't been great, but he is a veteran, and they are on the hook for $2 million with him. I think that he'll end up being quarterback 2, at least to start the season. But the Bajan thing has been fun, and not a lot of this preseason has been fun. So it's okay. It was a welcome development to have something to root about and talk about on Twitter or X over the weekend with no Justin Fields and no starter. So I've enjoyed it. I don't know how far it's going to go on the depth chart, but it's been fun. And that's what we need during, the armpit of training camp in the preseason.
I mean, people are saying that he should be the starter. I'm not going that far. I'm telling everyone to pump the brakes real quick.
Those are the same people. Yeah, those are the same people that think that Justin Fields is a running back, right?
Probably. Everyone's like, "Oh, this is like Brady and Bledsoe." I'm like, "Okay,
oh, stop it,
get out of here." But Patrick, I know we're coming up on time here, but I would love to get you back on the show soon. I'll talk to you for a second after we close off. But last question, really quick: what is your season prediction for the Chicago Bears before we close out?
9 wins.
That is my rock bottom for the Bears. I'm very optimistic show about the Bears, but it's better than last year, and this team is better. But
I think that if the Bears were to win the division, I would be surprised but not shocked. Right? There's the division can be competitive. Everybody in that division can be competitive. And I think that 7 wins is probably a floor for me with the Bears this year. And but I feel good saying that they'll win 9 games, health permitting, obviously,
Yeah, let's keep that in mind.
With injuries being the topic of the evening, we got to throw that caveat out there.
I'm literally knocking on wood as we speak, but yeah, hopefully the traders keep right. Everyone gets healthy soon. I'd rather have these major injuries happen now versus during the middle of the season. So, hopefully the injury bug is gotten itself out of the Bears system and we can move forward. But Patrick, thanks for tuning in or logging on, man. I really appreciate it. We'll have you back on again soon. If you can stay on for a second after too, that'd be great. But thanks for coming on, Patrick.
Yeah,
really appreciate
absolutely.
it.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And with that, thank you for joining this episode of Just Another Year Chicago. My name is Nick Brody, joined alongside Patrick Flowers, and we'll see you guys.